Hello everyone, this is my live stream. Here we are, and I thought what I'd do is just spend some time this afternoon with you guys. It is a 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon New Zealand time, so I thought I'd just come on and say hello. I haven't got really too many plans for what to do during this live stream. I've got one instrument that I'm going to... a couple of instruments that I'll show you, so I thought I would do that. It would appear that the live stream is called Plastic Cornet Review, so let me just get rid of that because I'm not specifically going to be talking about the plastic cornet. How do I save that? I've made changes to that. How do I save? Oh, who cares? So look, it's great to have you here. Let me just take a drink because I'm very old. So I thought I wanted to start with showing you a really new instrument that I've acquired. I got this on eBay. It was sold as a flugelhorn, but it's not specifically. Somebody wants me to shout out. Hopefully that would be acceptable for that request. It was sold as a flugelhorn, but I don't think it is a flugelhorn. It looks like a flugelhorn. It needs to be restored and start working up. It looks like a flugelhorn, but I don't think it is. I forget that everything's reversed in the screen. It's in the key of G, and it is a marching instrument. It was made by the DEG company. The G stands for Getson, but it's not the Getson of the Getson company, although he's of the same family that is the Getson of the Getson company. It's a different Getson. Donald E. Getson is what the D and the E, or the E, I don't know what the E stands for, so Donald Getson. It's a dynasty instrument, and as I said, it's in the key of G. And I noticed it was a bit weird because it's sometimes a little bit hard to estimate exactly what you're getting when you buy instruments online, but I saw this third valve tuning slide with this bizarre right-angled approach to how they wrapped that, and I thought that looked bizarre. And then if you look at the first valve tuning slide, it's also got this weird right-angled approach. It's a very angular aesthetic, which doesn't really make sense to me. But I also noticed that the main tuning slide has got a wrap, an additional wrap in it here to extend it. And so that's why I knew it wasn't a B-flat flugelhorn. So I bought it. It wasn't particularly expensive, and it took the usual time to arrive because it was sent to me from the UK. How a marching instrument ended up in the UK, where they don't subscribe to the old style, everything in the key of G marching sort of thing, I don't know. But the thing that I think is absolutely ridiculous about it is that if you hold it up to your face, because the lead pipe is so low, then the valves are right in line with your eyes, and you can't actually see what you're playing. You can't see in front of you. It takes up 80% of your vision, so it looks really ridiculous when you're holding it in the hand. Or somebody's made a comment. I'm a big DCI guy. Those horns were common in the 70s and mid-80s. Some call like marching flugels to close the gap between the soprano 3-valve bugle and the soprano 3-valve bugle. How can you have a gap between the soprano 3-valve bugle and the soprano 3-valve bugle? I'm going to assume that that's a typo. I have a 2-valve soprano bugle up here. This is my this is also a DEG. This is a Dynasty 2-valve soprano bugle, and it's got this weird. It still works. It's got the weird first valve spring mechanism where it's in tune when it's out and you push it to go sharp, which is the opposite to what I'm used to in brass band worlds. But this is a G soprano bugle, and this is a G flugelhorn bugle-y sort of thing. Trying to find a 3-valve soprano bugle seems to be quite difficult to do, but I've got a 2-valve. Not that you can do everything with just 2 valves, so that lives up on my wall of many things behind me. So this instrument, it needs some restoration work. It's got a bit of a crinkle in the bell. I can fix that pretty bad. I can fix that pretty easily. The 3rd valve seems to work alright. The 2nd valve doesn't have a felt in there, and so the valve goes down too far, and it makes it a clicking noise. I can fix that as well. The third valve, the first valve, what am I saying, only goes down part way, and you sort of have to push it further, and it seems really gritty, so I need to fix that. When I got it, all the valves were in the wrong holes, so they were in the wrong order. You couldn't blow any air through the thing, but it's going to be a bit of an interesting instrument. So that's a new thing that I've acquired, and I shall put it over there for it. Now there's some other people. Do you still enjoy playing the Gene Paul trumpet? Because I just bought one online. Please answer this! Sorry I had to do that to get your attention. Please read this. And that's a question by I Suck at Gaming. I feel really sorry for you to have that as your name, I Suck at Gaming. I don't know what your parents were thinking of when they called you that. Yes, I've still got my Gene Paul trumpet. Yes, I still enjoy playing it. I don't play it too terribly often. There's most people that know that have followed me for a while. I had spinal surgery twice in the last few months, and then I had a flu for a week and a half, or a cold or whatever for a week and a half, and my daughter's had pneumonia and all sorts of things, so I haven't been particularly very active recently, and I certainly haven't been playing trumpet very recently, but hopefully that answers your question about the Gene Paul trumpet. Are there any other questions? How many instruments, collection-wise? I have about 60 or so brass instruments in my spreadsheet of things. I've got more than that. It's just where do you draw the line between an instrument and then a collection of parts? I have about 60 brass instruments that are instruments, in that if you spent time repairing them and restoring them, you could get them to work. But a lot of my instruments are not in usable condition, or not in properly usable condition. There's very few instruments that I have, relatively speaking, that are in good working condition. Do you know about the Duke Ellington School of the Arts in Washington, D.C., USA? I'll just let you know before I answer that, Sharkman YT, that there is a key on your keyboard. It's got shift written on it. Actually, there's another one that's got caps lock written on it. If you press that, it'll make you look less of a dick when writing comments on a person's YouTube thing. No, I haven't heard of it, other than the fact you've mentioned it about 12 times on the stream. So there we go. What was the first brass instrument I ever played? The first brass instrument I ever learned was a cornet. Sorry, I've got a person with a very small penis outside revving a car very loudly. I don't know how much that's going to come across, but if you hear a lot of noise, it'll be mine and my neighbours. The very first instrument I learnt was a cornet. I started learning from my granddad at the age of 4. I actually have that cornet still. After my granddad died a few months ago, I acquired his old instruments, including this here, which is an 1885 Besson horn. You can change the tuning crooks in that to have it play in the key of E, E flat, D, D flat, C, and maybe one more, but I don't have all the crooks in it. It needs a lot of restoration work. But I also acquired the bits that constitute the first cornet that I ever learnt on. It's in pieces. It's in about 12 pieces, but I've got that instrument that I first learnt on. So I want to restore that one day. Panda Care asks, how do you make noise in brass instruments? You go like this. It's called buzzing, and that is what makes your instrument sound nice. I'm from Auckland. Where are you from? I live in Wellington. I'm originally from down south in New Zealand, in a little town called Oamaru, which is where people go if they want to die. So that's where I'm from. Somebody seriously asked me about the Gene Paul trumpet again. Oh, that one's gone. Trent Hamilton, big fan. I thought mostly people watch my channels as opposed to metallic objects that rotate. Have I ever heard of a Jules de Very Paris cornet? I obtained one a year ago. I believe it's from the year 1870. No, I haven't heard specifically of them. There were a lot of small-time brass manufacturers in the sort of mid to late 1800s. A lot of them were either went defunct or were absorbed by some of the larger brass manufacturing companies. I haven't heard that one. Do I still have the plastic trumpet? Yes, I do. Do I prefer sousaphone or contras? I've never played a contra bass bugle, the ones that you have on your shoulder. I've played a sousaphone, a proper sousaphone once, and I don't really have any recollections of that. It was a long time ago. Do you have a left-handed trumpet? Believe it or not, no. However, here's a tip for beginners. This isn't a trumpet, this is a cornet, but you can hold it in the normal way, which is with your right hand, but you can also go with your left hand, and you can play it that way. Now, of course, this little pinky ring is in the wrong place, but you can hold it with your right hand, and you can play perfectly adequately. So, no, I don't have a left-handed trumpet, nor am I left-handed, but if I had to, I could solve that problem. What is the silverish French horn trumpet hybrid looking thing in the corner? Are you referring to this? If you're referring to this, this is a Con Mellophonium. If you search for Mellophonium on YouTube, you will see a video that I've done about that very instrument. It was an instrument that was created in the mid-1900s as trying to create a sort of different sort of sound for a musical group. I can't remember the name of the guy who requested them be made. They're not wonderful instruments, but they are different. They are 2 feet long, so if you want to hold it, you need to be aware that the bell, as well as it being the same sized as a collapsed sun, is 2 feet away from you, so it is quite a big instrument to play. It's in the key of F, so it's the same key as a standard mellophone. It's just stretched out. High school player, any advice for upper register euphonium playing with braces? If you've got braces on your teeth, my advice is to take them off while you're playing and then just put them on again. It will take several hours and a couple of trips to the dentist, but that's really the best way to get around that situation. I don't think having to play any brass instrument with braces, depending on the design of the braces, is particularly great, just because it can do some damage to your lips if it's sharp and if you're using a lot of pressure and things like that. I'm not an expert on that particular thing. I've never had to have braces, thankfully. I think when my teeth were formed in my head, they thought I was going to have to deal with having a face like this, so they didn't think I also needed crooked teeth. So it's not something I have to live with, really. Where is the contrabass trombone you broke? Lol. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. As if my soul wasn't hurting enough. My contrabass trombone is over there. This is my garage. This is specifically a corner of my garage, and so over there I have a set of shelves, and that's got about 20 or so musical instruments and cases on it there, and I've got about 5 or 6 trombone cases in front of it. I have a workbench over there, I've got my metal lathe over there, I've got 2 workbenches over there, I've got a digital piano there, and over in the far corner, excuse me, I have my digital pipe organ. Hi Trent, do you have any advice for me, because I'm a beginner and just started playing a Gene Paul B flat trumpet? Biggest advice I'd have is to learn where the caps lock key is on your keyboard. It will serve you in great stead if you can alternate between writing in uppercase and writing in lowercase. Other than that, find a tutor, have somebody to teach you, because going at it alone, often you'll develop bad habits and you won't get the best out of your playing, your musicianship. It's always best to learn from someone that can individually go through your weaknesses and strengths and go through that, as opposed to just trying to do it yourself. I learned the trombone by myself. I had somebody, when I was about 6 or 7 it might have been, I had somebody show me what the 7 positions on a trombone were, and then I did everything myself for a number of years until I actually got a tutor, and I had a lot of things that I needed to correct and work on as a result of that. So if you've got the opportunity to learn from somebody talented and skilled, I always recommend you do that. From now on though, if somebody puts a please read this in comments. I'm not really going to bother. If I read a comment out and answer it, then great. If you really want me to answer something, then you can do super chats, which are things you donate whilst saying something, and then it lights it up in big flashing lights and colours and things, and I get to see it properly. But yes. What kind of instrument, that baritone looking thing behind you? This here is quite a raggedy baritone that I was actually given. It is a Bach brand. I don't know anything about the model name, because even though it's got Bach written on it up in here, it's got so much tarnish on the lacquer that you can hardly read anything. It's about a euphonium proportioned baritone. Oh gosh, and the valves are sticky because I haven't played it for a while. It's quite a big instrument. I'd love to have it converted to a 4-valve instrument so I can use it a bit better, but that would involve, it's doable. I just need to get a 4th valve with the right bore and put it on there and things like that. It's got potential and it certainly works, but yeah, at the moment it just sits on my wall of many things. When I redid my wall of many things, I tried to get it so that I could take instruments off as opposed to having them draped from spits of string. Can you see my comments? Yes. I've got a 1915 4-valve E-flat tuba recently, and for whatever reason the 1-3 combination for C below the stave doesn't want to speak. I have to use 2-3-4 to get it. Any ideas why this might happen? Off the top of my head, without looking at it, no. If it's a very old instrument, then they can have some really bizarre, weird things that just don't seem to work right, and usually it's a combination of the linkages between the valves. There being a leak somewhere, a small hole in a tuning slide, not using the right size mouthpiece, all of that weird sort of stuff. So without seeing an instrument, it's impossible for me to say. Hey Trent, are there any, or have there ever been any instrument manufacturers in New Zealand? No major commercial ones that I'm aware of. There was a guy called Charles Begg who imported a lot of instruments. He owned a piano shop and he sold brass instruments, and there are a number of instruments in my collection that have Chas Begg, because that's the abbreviation for Charles, Chas Begg importer or something stamped onto it below the maker's stamp. So, but no manufacturers that I'm aware of. I have tryouts for band. I have tryouts for band in my region, and they're a very serious and competitive thing in the band at my school. Any tips for vibrato and memorizing scales, specifically chromatic? Chromatic scales are the same series of notes, just starting and stopping in a different place, and the only way you're going to get good at them is practice. With vibrato, I've done a video on vibrato. It's an individual expression, and there are lots of ways of doing it. I go through a few in the video that I've done on vibrato, so I suggest perhaps going and listening to that. Sharkman asks another intelligent question: will I marry him? No, I wouldn't, largely because my preferred mate is warm-blooded and is of the female inclination, and I'm already married. So yeah, you've got that going against you, unfortunately. Jared looks like he's shared his PIN number, which is 6324. I'll repeat that again, 6324, for anyone who misses that. Once more, 6324. So thanks for your comment. Mitchell Harper: hey Trent, that cornet I asked about earlier, which is from Austria in 1870, is in a very high pitch, nearing A equals 452 by my guess. Do you have any idea why this is? Old instruments, particularly in Europe, often are not in modern concert pitch. A equals 440 is a relatively new concept, and even now there are still some musical groups in the world that don't use A equals 440. So a lot of the instruments that I've got from the UK or from Europe are often in high pitch. Some of them have been modified to speak in low pitch, but the A equals 440 standard is a new thing. From about the 30s onward, it's sort of become more standard in UK and Europe. How many trumpets or cornets do I have? Probably about 12 or so. Yeah, 12 or so. But I mean, in various conditions of playability. I've got one instrument here. This is my world's cheapest cornet. It is a cornet, even though I've taken the third valve out. It is a cornet, but it's not of any musical value. Let's just put that down there. Hey Trent, does the price of an instrument affect the way an instrument sounds? Naturally, there is a correlation between the price you pay for an instrument and the quality, and therefore the resulting tonal quality of it. That being said, a good player will make a cheap instrument sound wonderful, and a bad player can make a wonderful instrument sound awful. So there is a correlation between price and quality and everything, but it needs to be matched by the talent of the player. Yeah, so there's that. You're pretty amazing. Huh. It'd be nice if my family thought so. Anyway, what's my most expensive instrument? I haven't really spent a lot on any of my instruments. I do have some instruments that are reasonably valuable, like I have my Besson N harmonic cornet that I've shown before. That cost me, I think, it was about 800 New Zealand dollars or something like that, 800 or 900 New Zealand dollars. That was quite expensive for me to spend on an instrument. My bass trombone, my King 7B, cost me, I think, 11 or 1300. My tenor Getson 3047 AFR trombone cost about $1,300, I think. They're probably the most that I've spent on instruments. Yeah, so but I don't usually spend a lot on instruments, although because I have so many, the cumulative amount is something that I wouldn't like to guess, largely because there's a chance my wife might be watching and I don't want her to know. How do you use sarcasm? Use sarcasm by practice, really. How has my spine been lately? Generally quite a lot better. After my surgeries in the last couple of months, things took a long time to get better, but I'm not needing to take morphine every day, so that's a good thing. Before my surgery, I was taking morphine multiple times a day for about 6 months, and it wasn't much fun. Which is better, timpanis or toms? Timpanis, because you've got the street cred of saying that you carry around two very large objects with you. Toms are... every Tom, Dick or Harry's got one. How many trombones do I own? Probably about 8 to 10. How many trombones do I own that are in good playable condition? Maybe 4? 5? If you're lucky. Yeah. I inspired you to play trombone. Yes. Well, good. If I inspired you to play trombone well, then that's fantastic. If I inspired you to make a raucous noise that is a displeasure to your neighbours, then I'm very, very sorry. T. Stanton asks, have you tried a marching baritone? No, I don't. No, I haven't, rather, I should say. I've often wanted to get a marching baritone to have a fiddle with, but because I live in New Zealand and we don't do the whole marching band scene, it would mean importing one from the US. They're expensive, and I've never really just got for it. So I've never really gotten one, because it's more money than I'm prepared to spend for something that that I wouldn't really play very often. Bye, I have to leave, but before I do, what about that G bass trombone? What about the G bass trombone? Is there a question there? I have two. One of them my granddad played for 40 years. One of them I was given, and that one there is about 110 years old. So yeah, I like your accent. I don't have an accent. This is just how words sound when they're pronounced properly. Have I ever played a woodwind instrument in a public place? No. Every time I've played a woodwind instrument, it has been in private. My neighbours have usually been on holiday at the same time, and I've given strict instructions to my wife not to disturb me. I don't really like it. I don't really like it being public knowledge. How did you get into instrument repair or alteration? I'm a music education major, but I'm considering an apprenticeship with my local horn manufacturer. I'm not an instrument repairer or an alterer. I'm a guy with some tools who fiddles around. Seriously, anything that I do to an instrument is done at the risk of those people who entrust me with their instruments. The vast majority of the time they're mine. And I just look up some guides online and try to follow them. That's really all. There's nothing. I'm not a great example as far as instrument repair or alteration goes. How did you keep a straight face while sarcastically reviewing the 5-valve trombone? It wasn't a sarcastic review. What are you talking about? That was a serious review. Oh gosh. Yes, now I can talk to Mr. Trombone himself. Ironically, by posting it in a comment. What is your favourite instrument in your collection? It's really hard to say. I have a number of instruments and things that have sentimental value to me, such as my granddad's G-bass trombone. That has sentimental value to me. I've also got the mouthpiece that my dad played on. I wasn't able to get the cornet that he played on, but I've got his mouthpiece as well as my other granddad's cornet and things like that. So they have sentimental value to me. And then I've got some rare instruments which are interesting to me and are special, but I don't think I've got a favourite per se. So, yeah. How should I get a trombone to practice on? I will definitely go and rob a bank and then buy one with the fruits of your crime. That's the best way to start learning a trombone. Do I have a German trumpet? I think I do. This trumpet here is in the key of E flat. I think it's either an E flat or F. It's like an alto tenor trumpet sort of thing. It's a Boland and Fox Fuchs something or other brand. I can't pronounce it. But it's actually quite a nice instrument. I had to do some repairs on it, but yeah, it's quite nice. So this is my sort of tenory, alto-y trumpet, but I think that's German, made in Graslitz. Music Instrumenten Fabric. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. Did you play the clarinet? Yes, I did. Please play high notes on your trumpet for us. Yes. Hey Hamilton. Hey Hamilton. Do you recommend spitballs to use on trumpets? What do you mean by spitballs? I mean, when I was in school, we used to get ballpoint pens and disassemble them and get little pieces of paper and put them in our mouth and go, pooey! And I can't see any way that, if that's what you're referring to, would add any value to any sort of musicianship, but who knows. What is the most obscure key that any of your instruments are in? I've reviewed a number of Indian-made instruments that are in the key of B natural as opposed to B flat, although I don't know if that's specifically intentional. Hey Trent, I inherited a Reynolds Couture something or other, an Argentina trombone. Have you ever heard of them or played them? I have a Reynolds. I don't know. I can't remember what the model of my Reynolds trombone is, but I haven't played it because it needs restoration, so it just sits in its case. I've never heard of an Argentina trombone. I've had one instrument and it's spoiled me rotten so far. Good. What instrument am I the best on? Don't know. How is my Gene Paul TR430 trumpet? Is it still in good quality? Yes, it's perfectly fine. It hasn't suffered a lot of use recently. It just sits in its case. Actually, the last time I did a cleanup in here, I put it away, and I haven't gotten it out since. But that was a few weeks ago. Hey Trent, what is the highest note that you can play on a trumpet? D. May you give advice on how to get over stage fright? Right, so this is a serious question, so I'll answer it seriously. Stage fright is something that does affect quite a few people to a varying degree, and it can cause some people to play really well or some people to play really poorly. Generally, practice. Stage fright's all a mental thing. It's all in your head, and you can put your body through through an approximation of what it's going to be like to play on a stage, even if no one's watching you. If you're sitting there playing a piece and you're thinking to yourself, right, imagine a crowd, imagine an audience, and imagine everyone's looking at you and things like that. You can actually start your body replicating some of those symptoms of stage fright. Conversely, when you're actually in a playing thing, in a playing environment with lots of people watching you, you can do the opposite. You can think, right, I'm just playing for myself. And really that's all you're doing. It's just that there's a few people listening. I always find that if I perform in a group, I don't get anxious or worried or anything like that. If I have to perform a solo, then I tend to get a bit more nervous. One of the symptoms of that for me is that my mouth goes dry, so I just ensure that I have a bottle of water with me and just take a swig whenever I need to. There are other people who say imagine everyone naked. That doesn't really help with me, or imagine people in their underwear. That doesn't really help with me because most of the people that come to brass band competitions are usually old and men, and that's not my particular personal persuasion. So that's not an approach that I would recommend. But audiences are there generally wanting you to succeed. They want you to do well for the most part, and so there's no one there that's going to take delight in you failing. It's all about, with music, it's all about the collaboration and support and camaraderie and all the rest of it. So yeah, but recognize what sort of things you're going to feel when you have stage fright. If it's just you're going to be really shaky and really nervous, then work on relaxation techniques beforehand, slow breathing. If you get things like dry mouth, then feel free to take a water bottle with you, and you should be fine. Mr. Reynolds' Argentina trombone is made from pure nickel silver, including the bell slides and all other parts. How would this affect the tone? I've never played on an instrument that's made out of pure silver. Nickel silver is not actually silver, it's just nickel, which has a silver colour to it. I think it might even be an alloy of nickel, I'm not too sure. But there's the idea that nickel gives you different tonal qualities and a different response. I'm not too sure about that. I know that silver tends to give you better response and better vibration passages through the instrument. I've not played on an instrument that's pure silver, and I've not played on an instrument that's pure nickel either, so I can't really answer that question much more than that. I failed my chair test today and I got teased by dumb CVs, and I want to know what's better, and I want to be better at tonguing. Advice, question. Also, I know tonguing sounds weird. I can't give any advice on chairs. I'm currently sitting on an office chair that if I lean forward, the back of it actually comes off its stand, so that doesn't work. But it's more comfortable than the other chair that I used to use before I had my back surgeries. I can't help you on preparing for a chair test. What size mouthpiece do I use for the trombone? On bass trombone, I use a Denniswick 0AL. If I have to play something on bass trombone where it needs quite a lot of flexibility, I use a 2AL. If I'm playing tenor trombone, a large bore tenor trombone, I'll use a 4AL. If I'm playing a small bore tenor trombone, I'll use a 6BY or a 6BL. 6BY, I think it is. Yeah. How do you build range on trumpet, and what mouthpieces do you recommend? Range on trumpet is something that you can is perhaps best done by buzzing. So you can get your mouthpiece, and this is an example of a mouthpiece, and you can use doing sweeping glissandos with your mouthpiece, and you can use that to build up your range. So by doing that sort of thing and just going louder, going higher and lower, you can work on your flexibility through the ranges. And when you do that, do a decent amount of practice with that sort of thing, and follow that through to actual playing on the instrument, it will help your range increase. And it's a good way of helping your range increase too, because you're not having to worry about valves or harmonic series intervals and things like that. Benquio Parish asks me to play a double C. Now this is a cornet, not a trumpet, but I'll play a double C. There we go, double C. I can play a triple C as well if you want. It's just another one of them. Somebody donated $3. Thank you very much for your donation. YouTube takes 30% of that, so you've actually donated me $2, and which I very much appreciate. So thank you very much for that. Are you going to make a video on the alto-like horn on your wall left of the mellophonium under the unique double horn? This thing here, I think I might have done a video on it, or at least I've talked about it in a previous live stream. It is... I will just leave that there for now. It's a Besson horn that was made in 1885. It's in very poor condition. It's got some fiberglass repairs where somebody's got, I think it's fiberglass, and they've just sort of smeared it over some of the tubing and things like that. It's actually able to play in 5 different keys, from E natural down to C. Or B natural, E natural down to B natural, or something like that. You just need all the different tuning slides, and it's got little marks on the tuning slides on how to on where it needs to be tuned and things like that. I don't actually know what it's specifically called, because I know a lot of those old things were called things like vocal horns and ballad horns and all sorts of things. It's neither of them, but it might have a special name. Please play a double high C for us. I'm sorry for not being specific enough. Right. A double high C. There we go, a double high C. Hey Trent, I recently joined the brass band of Central Florida as a tenor horn player. Do you have any advice or stories for the American who is just getting his feet wet in the British brass band trad? I don't really know. Having grown up in the British brass band trad all my life, and having my feet wetted thoroughly by the spit of my players to either side of me, it's not something I need introducing to. So having, in your case, where you've grown up in a completely different tradition, I don't know really what there is to say or recommend or anything like that. I don't know. Electric train or coal train? I don't know what that question is. I'm a fan of steam trains myself. Forte Piano, congratulations on your successful surgery. And then he tries to be a dick with glad to see the ligma is out of your body. I'm a bit too clever for you, and I'm not going to ask what that means. Any advice to double tongue? Yes, if you're struggling with double tonguing, there's two things you can do. You can either watch my video on double tonguing, or you can get a sharp knife and bifurcate your tongue along its central line, and then just sort of do them tongue as pistons, using one side of your tongue or the other. I would watch my video, the video I've done on double and triple tonguing myself, but you know, use whatever option you like. What's the point of gold mouthpieces? I don't think I've ever seen an instrument, a mouthpiece that's pure gold. They're normally just gold plated. I don't believe they have any tonal benefits, although gold is a good thermal conductor, so they tend to warm up a bit quicker, and some people prefer the feeling of gold mouthpieces on their face. This cornet mouthpiece that I had out before is gold plated, and it feels nice on the face, and it's nice to play with. I don't think it has any real difference to a silver mouthpiece in terms of quality or tonal characteristics. Sharkman, I don't need to know that you're gay, and if you say that again, I'm going to prevent your comments from showing up. So please just have some reasonably if you're going to post a comment, make sure they contribute. How to not splat notes. Play quieter. Do I anchor tongue on trumpet? I don't know what anchor tongue means. Did you ever play recorder? Yes. Oh gosh, at primary school we all had to learn recorder. And of course recorders come with only a vague approximation of accuracy when it comes to the size. So some recorders were slightly out of tune with each other, some recorders were greatly out of tune with each other. So you would make an awful sound when you had a school class trying to play a recorder together. When the principal thought it was a good idea for the entire school to play a piece of Together, Woo for Three Blind Mice, the sound was beyond belief. But yes, I have had that pleasure of playing recorder. I'm a trumpet player. Any suggestions? Learn how to make coffee. Most professional trumpet players I know, if I meet them in the street, I tend to say the same thing, and that's one coffee, please. I don't have any serious answers for that. Can I play a C above the staff? It depends which staff. How long have I been playing trumpet? I started learning cornet when I was 4. When did I actually first pick up a trumpet? I have no idea. But I'm now 29, so that's 25 years I've been playing. Gosh. Anchor tonguing is also known as K tonguing with the ku syllable. The idea is that it helps you arch your tongue. Oh, well, I do that whenever you double tongue, because you do the two ku syllable at the same time. Do I do it deliberately instead of single tonguing with the tongue? Sometimes, but only as a practice exercise for practicing the K syllable. Dang, you look about 19. I really don't. What's the weirdest instrument you own? I don't know. I mean, some of the instruments that I own are weird in certain circumstances, like the 2-valve bugle that I've got up here. That's weird in the brass band circumstances, but it's perfectly normal at other parts of the world, so it's hard to answer that one. Have I ever played a G bass trumpet? No, I haven't. How many brass instruments do you own? Around 60 or so. What are my thoughts on string instruments? Well, my favourite string instrument is actually my bass trombone. The triggers are operated using, or the linkages for the triggers are string, and so therefore that, in my mind at least, is a string instrument, and the only acceptable string instrument to play. Hello, Mr. Hamilton. Do I know Joe Thomas? He's a lad. No, I don't. Is that a 6-valve trumpet on top? Yes. This up here is my 6-valve trumpet. I've done a couple of videos on that 6-valve trumpet, and you can watch them and learn what a monstrosity it is. How's my daughter? She's alright. She had pneumonia recently, but she's getting better now. What do I think of Wessex instruments? I haven't actually played any Wessex instruments. From what I hear, they're some of the best Chinese-made stuff you can get, but I haven't actually played them myself. You have a daughter? Yes, I do have a daughter. Let me see if I can find a photo that I don't mind sharing to the world. That is a photo of my daughter. Yes, I am drinking straight vinegar for anyone who is interested. There's a photo where she's not in a ball pit. Ah, no one wants to see my surgery photos. That's the photo I use as my wallpaper on my phone. Have you played a brass instrument that has more than 4 valves? Yes, I've played a 6-valve brass instrument. I've also done a video on a 5-valve trumpet, which you might be interested in go seeing. So look, that's probably enough questions and answers and things. If there's anyone that wants to ask me any more subsequent questions, then you can feel free to contact me on Facebook or YouTube, or emailing me on something. One thing I do want to mention briefly is that I have spent quite a lot of money in designing a bunch of new shirts, a bunch of new designs for t-shirts and merchandise and things. So if you are interested in seeing and getting some designs that have, there's this trombone design that I've got, but I've also got another one for tuba shaped instruments, trombones and trumpets, and they've got a sort of splat sort of design on them. So if you're interested in getting some of them, then in the description down below any of my videos you should get a link to my Spreadshirt shop. Let me just see if I can create a link in the chat here. And if you go and have a look at that, you can see some different things that you can go and buy that have the various logos that I've got. If you want to see any other items that go beyond just the various t-shirts and jerseys and hoodies and drink bottles and phone cases things, then let me know and I can add those logos to different merchandise options and things like that. Will I do another stream soon? I don't know. The only reason I'm doing one now is because I was a bit bored, frankly, and I really need to tidy up my garage, but I can't be bothered. So I thought I'd come and spend an hour or so with you guys here. So thank you very much for watching, and have a nice rest of whatever period of time it currently is in your life.